Hey, what's up guys? John here. New York City is now planning to pay property owners to house migrants. I believe there's something huge happening behind the scenes right now if we start to really connect the dots. Look at what Joe Biden said. He said this about 2 weeks ago, that they want to reduce homelessness by 25% by 2025. Do the math on that. Year and a half, you want to reduce the homelessness numbers by 25% in these areas. So to be clear, it's Chicago, Dallas, Los Angeles, Phoenix Metro, Seattle, and the entire state of California with 225,000 homeless. How do you reduce the population by 25%? Are you going to increase the housing stock by 25%? No. You're going to find strategic ways in which you're going to try to compensate property owners to bring people into your homes. Sounds far-fetched, it sounds crazy. It's actually happening right now in New York City, and I believe this is more or less a pilot program that's likely going to get spread out nationwide. And I think it's the greatest power grab of all time happening right now on property owners in the face of record high inflation, increased insurance costs, increased property taxes, increased cost of living, and we have a crippling job market. Things are falling apart, and what they're doing right now is reaching for more authority and more power from everyday Americans. Now, it kind of reminds me of this quote from Ronald Reagan. He said, "The 9 most terrifying words in the English language are, I'm from the government and I'm here to help." Now look at what Mayor Adams is doing right now. He floats an idea of New Yorkers housing migrants in private residences. Now in this video, I'm going to break it down for you. Please hit the like button. When you hit the like button, YouTube is going to share this content to educate more people about what's really going on. And if you want to fix your credit, we would love to help you and give you a free consultation. The economy is changing, and I think there's going to be a lot of opportunity in front of us. And if you have great credit, you're going to be positioned to pick up, I believe, some once-in-a-lifetime opportunities. So we'd love to help you. GreatCreditFast.com. Schedule a free consultation. Take a look at this. So Mayor Adams now wants to start paying everyday New Yorkers to shelter migrants in their own homes. Now, some people might say that's a good thing. Some might say it's a bad thing. But we have to look at the facts first and foremost. When you lease your property, right now you do a credit check, you're doing a background check, you're really looking into the tenant, you're checking income, you're doing all of these things, right? You're making sure you do your research and due diligence. But when you're housing a migrant, you can't really do a credit check. You can't really look into their background so much. And their income is backed by the government. So if, for whatever reason, maybe you have an issue, maybe that person you rented to isn't the person that you were hoping they were, or they would be, and they end up becoming a real big nuisance. Maybe they steal from you. Maybe there are harassment claims. Maybe they try to sue you. It could be anything, right? Because you just simply don't know. So you take on a lot of additional risk. And I believe what could ultimately happen is that there could be many, many, many situations in which the person gets placed in a property, there's a massive disagreement, and the landlord cannot get them out. After all, this is New York City. They had an eviction moratorium in New York until January 15th of 2022. So think about that. They had this eviction moratorium. Actually, it got extended. Let's see, it extended, January 15th, 2022. So you think about that. They've had the eviction moratorium for a couple of years. It's been hell on earth being a landlord in New York City. And now they want to push property owners to become landlords. Now, the cost to evict a tenant, if you don't know, in New York City, in Los Angeles, if you go Google it, it might say $125, $140. That's if they just simply accept it. But in a place like New York and LA, they have free tenant representation, where the tenant will get represented by an attorney appointed by the city, and they would basically go sue the landlord. And the landlord will have to pay $300 to $500 an hour to defend it. And so during an eviction moratorium, you're basically accumulating legal fees and taking losses on your apartment. And now when this happens and you have a tenant and you need to evict that tenant, you might have 6 months or a year with you not being able to get that tenant out. Meanwhile, you're incurring massive legal fees, $10,000, $15,000, $20,000 or more. I've had situations in Los Angeles where you would think a basic eviction would be, $1,000 or $500, where it goes $20,000, $25,000. This is the actual real cost. So when they dangle this carrot, just realize that when anyone's offering you something for free, they're probably gaining something on the other end that's much greater than what you're receiving. He goes on to say that as the Big Apple struggles to find beds for thousands of asylum seekers still flooding into the city, in his latest attempt to battle the ongoing migrant crisis, on Monday he floated a half-baked. This is not half-baked. Whenever they say it's half-baked, no, this is premeditated. They know what they're doing. Private residence plan, which could possibly see local homeowners getting compensation to put up asylum seekers. Now you think about that. They're getting compensation. Where are they getting the money? They're getting the money from taxpayers. So they're essentially, if you look at what they've done to people in New York over the last few years with their businesses, which businesses are essential, which ones are not, property owners have been absolutely beaten and battered over the last couple of years. Left, right, and center. Whether it be their businesses, whether it be taxes, everything has just been challenging. You see all the tourism that was pulled out of New York for the last, the first year and a half. You start to look at that. Now what's happening with record high inflation, record high insurance and property taxes, people are, they're desperate. And so they're taking their tax revenue and then they're saying, you know what, here we took $1, we'll give you back 10 cents, we'll give you back 15 cents. But on the flip side, we're going to be able to say how you can operate your primary residence and what you can and can't do and how you must behave in this property when it comes to this tenant, when you can evict them, on what terms and conditions. They start taking over this situation. And then as enough people do this, there's going to be so many people that are going to start turning against property owners even more. And it's just going to turn into a really, really big problem. Just watch this, because I'm telling you, this story is at the beginning stages, and I believe this is going to be something that's going to be common in many cities all throughout America in the next year or so. He put forward the proposal. He revealed religious leaders have agreed to start housing adult male migrants at 50 places of worship. Now, it's very smart that they did that, because when they say, oh, look, the church, they're willing to house migrants across these 50 churches, if they're willing to do that, and that's a place of God, that's a place of which, accepts people, very loving, it's a place with family and unity. If they're willing to do that, and then they can start, positioning themselves to other, religious households, and they know America is a place, despite what the media will tell you, it's a place in which people are very, very connected to God. And when they can get that first, it's very easy to segue that conversation into, millions of other households. There are residents who are suffering right now because of economic challenges. They have spare rooms. They have locals, the mayor said, arguing that private residence proposal could put money back in the pockets of taxpayers. Adams didn't offer up specifics on how the plan would work, including how much New Yorkers could potentially receive per night to cover the cost of housing a migrant. Well, they actually go on to say that it's going to be $125. He says he did say, however, that the city would pay places of worship roughly $125 for each asylum seeker, which is cheaper than the $380 it costs to house a migrant. It costs to put up a migrant household, including family with kids or just single adults, in one of the shelters, right? So they're getting $125. That's for a church. Now you think about that, they might put 50, 100 people inside of this church. In a primary residence, they might pay $200, hypothetically, $250. That's a lot of money. That's a lot of money. Most people, they're going to work all day to make $250 or $200. They're going to get that just putting people in your house. Now, if you have a 3-bedroom house and you're only using one of those rooms, you might be able to make $400 a day, hypothetically, 12 grand a month. You think, hey, my mortgage is covered, life is covered, everything is covered, right? Until maybe the terms and conditions change. Maybe they have to reduce the payment. Maybe something else happens. And then the whole thing turns into a living nightmare. Because you have to, you look at what they say versus what they do, especially the last few years. A lot of people can see, the writing on the wall. It's never a situation in which benefits you, right? Even look at, stimulus, look at all these different, benefits that came out. What was the flip side of that? The flip side is record high inflation. The flip side was a harder life. The flip side was this affordability crisis. I think most people would agree that the world was a hell of a lot easier and better just 4 or 5 years ago compared to, how it is now. And they're pushing further into this direction. So you can just imagine what the future will look like. If the private residence plan went ahead, it would mean New Yorkers are being paid more to host migrant than a foster parent to raise a child in the Empire State. The state currently pays a daily allowance of $40 of children aged over 12 years, according to the Office of Children and Family Services. It's cheaper and a good investment for us to go to a family and assist them instead of placing people in large congregate settings or in the emergency hotels. Adams insisted on his private home plan. And then if you are a family member where you are bilingual, you're going to be able to help the bilingual person that's coming here, he added. That's another really good point. How many people are bilingual in New York? A lot, right? But imagine that. You have someone that can't speak your language inside of your home, that's having a hard time finding a job, that maybe doesn't have any other connections or family in that area. They have nothing to lose, right? And you might have a job of 20 years. You might have worked your whole life to buy this property. You might have so much to lose, and this person you can't even have a conversation with this person, right? Adams acknowledged that the city would need to get over a 30-day rule for how his plan would work. As for clarity on the rule, a City Hall spokesperson later cited New York law that requires a guest to be living in a residence for 30 days before they can legally become a tenant. And once that 30-day period happens, I'm telling you, that is when the problems come. Because the cost to evict the tenant, it's not like evicting a tenant in Florida. It's not like evicting a tenant in Texas. You might get that number, maybe $400 a day if you house two per day, right? You might get that number. But evicting that tenant might cost you $30,000. Like, it's expensive because you have to pay for your own attorney, and your own attorney in a place like New York is $200 to $400 an hour, right? And they're not just working for an hour. They're going to have to go to court. One full day jury trial, that might be 10 hours, right? It might cost you $2-3 grand just for that jury trial for the day, and the jury trial might be 4 or 5 days. And then you might have lawyer fee or court fees. You might have to pay a buyout where you have to actually pay that tenant to relocate at the end of it. And then all the time that's spent from start until jury trial, if it goes to jury trial, in a lot of these places, the tenants actually get free legal representation funded by the state pushing for a jury trial. Like, their job is to extract money from the landlord. And when that 30-day timeline hits, that's when they can really start doing just that. Now, I believe that when we're looking at the situation right now with mortgage rates, a lot of property owners, they're not going to be able to refinance, right? So, like, connect the dots here. You have rising property taxes, rising insurance, mortgage rates went from 3% to, in the 7s, and you have an affordability crisis with record high inflation. They're trying to supply this solution to you. And then on the flip side of that, like, all the problems that could be happening because of this could easily topple most people, right? If they can't pull money out of their property and their costs are continuing to rise, you're going to start seeing a lot of people walk away from these properties. But on the flip side from that, you're also going to see a lot of people turning against landlords, saying that, we need inequality, we need equality, we need to combat inequality. When we move into private residences, when you start to move in hundreds of thousands of people, this is what's going to happen. It's going to become the war on property owners. We're trying to navigate all the rules of how to get it done. He said, when pressed for further details, there are many layers to how someone can use their space. We want to make sure that we follow all the rules, and those rules that need to be changed with power, we will push to do it. If there's rules that need to be changed on the state level, we're going to reach out to our state colleagues to do so. Some homeowners were quick to rip the mayor's plan nuts and half-baked given the scarcity of details. Now, it's interesting. He said his plan is half-baked. Now the homeowners are saying that the plan is half-baked? No. I actually don't believe that homeowner said that. I think homeowners, they didn't say it's nuts. I think a lot of people are very, very smart. I think they know that it's purely a power grab against their property rights and their freedoms. And they didn't call it half-baked, because most people in New York, most people in America are a hell of a lot smarter than people realize. And when they're looking at this, they see it. They see the writing on the wall. And this, I think, had a lot of thought behind it. I think what they're doing had a lot of thought behind it, and they're presenting it as a very light way to open this conversation. And then they're going to be like, okay, we're going to offer this, and everyone's going to be like, wow, that's such a big number. This is incredible. And then they slowly start moving in like this, and then you're going to have all these property owners that are looking at this as the worst mistake that they ever made. In most cases, I'm sure some situations might work out. I want to be very clear. There might be some situations that work out well, but when you live with a roommate, if you've ever lived with a roommate, you know, for the most part, that not every roommate is going to be perfect, right? There's a lot of roommates that you get that you look at it and you're like, wow, that was a nightmare situation. Now imagine if you have a roommate where it's like a blind date, like you're going on Tinder, except they don't speak your language, potentially, and you have no idea really who they are or what they're about. They just basically show up at your front door, right? That's exactly what is being proposed, it seems like. It would be an absolute bedlam. Her partner, Tim Naylor, who had owned a townhouse for 24 years, added migrants shouldn't be getting a free ride when many New Yorkers can't afford a decent place of their own. Yeah, I mean, most You think about this. New York has record high taxes. Record high taxes. They put their people in a situation to where people can barely afford to survive. And then people come over, they get this free ride, and then the people essentially are weaponized against the property owners. It's insane. Even if it was worth it to homeowners, the city shouldn't be spending money on that kind of crap. You have enough New Yorkers who can barely afford to live. Before you know it, we're going to get flooded with even more migrants. He owns a condo here in Park Slope and weighed in on Adams' latest migrant proposal, insisting a plan seems very strange. Who are these people? What are their housing conditions? 77-year-old retiree said. He suggested the mayor was all talk, adding, it all sounds bites, but you don't find the details. New York City Council Republican leader posted on social media, what are the goals? When do we stop paying? What is the off-ramp? What do you think about this? What do you think about it? Drop below, hit the like button, subscribe here follow me on Instagram for short form content I won't post here. And again, if you want to fix your credit, we would love to help you at greatcreditfast.com. That's greatcreditfast.com. Catch you guys in the next one.